This video assumes you've seen my video why I wanted to playable Rex and how he could have worked. So if you haven't seen it already, please check it out first and then come back here. So this was something I was originally going to put in as the last section in my main video, but I decided against it and went with this approach instead. Mainly because of how long this got for what I was going for. Though, a decent chunk of this might hit off better with those already familiar with Xenoblade 2, but I think this should still be relatively easy to understand. Also, I apologize in advance if this ends up sounding more like a rant. There was a lot on my mind while I was writing this. So as I mentioned in the main video, I mentioned how I did not like how people in both the Smash and Xenoblade fandoms were pushing aside Rex's big presence in the Aegis moveset, just for cheap jokes about how he was left in the dust. Before I explain about the reveal and the presentation, I think this calls for an explanation on what my sentiment stems from. I'd like to start by mentioning that during the pre-release phase of Smash Ultimate, Rex was one of the most highly requested characters. Naturally, I was one of those rooting for him as well. Please work. He did well in fan polls at the time, and he placed the highest versus other Xenoblade characters. Of course, we all know about that Mii costume that seemingly nipped his chances in the bud. But that didn't stop him in another poll from 2019, and he still had a fairly decent placing in a 2020 poll as well. As you can see here, some polls also collectively put him with Pyra and Mythra. And it was because all the meanwhile, his supporter base commonly thought that it'd be ideal to have the driver and blade system implemented to Smash, and so did I. Funny enough, people did end up mentioning that it wouldn't be as good if Pyra and Mythra were in without him. Naturally, like most discussions about potential newcomers, there were also naysayers, who were rather persistent.
Give me Rex please and thank you.
Have a me.
Dude, get off, Rex will never get in Smash.
Get this man in Smash.
In your fucking dreams!
But look guys, look.
It's the guy that will never be in Smash.
He's a mini costume and a shit character. Cope harder.
Arms got its second chance, so maybe do the same here?
No, Rex has to wait until the next Smash Bros. Game. No stupid internet people. Sakurai is not hinting at Rex being a DLC fighter in Fighters Pass 2. Rex will be confirmed as a DLC fighter when the Rex Mii costume was revealed.
Min Min's announcement, however, was when hope for him as DLC came back for lots of people, including me. It was because Sakurai had previously talked about the demand for ARMS and Xenoblade 2 fighters, and the games just came around too late into development. I think it's easy to see how 2 and 2 were put together for what was hopefully next. So obviously, there was the Aegis' reveal, where after all that hype and hope for Rex, he wasn't playable, which was where my shock and slight disappointment came from. Despite it, I tried to take it in stride, acknowledging that while it's unfortunate, it was good to see how the content was there. This was something I tried to convey at the end of my reaction video, and later the presentation reaction, and I thought the supporter base from before would have a similar mindset. Instead, later in the day didn't do me any favors. Because despite all that prior hope, most of what I saw while I was browsing social media that day was actually gloating about how he wasn't playable. I know not every supporter from the Smash or Xenoblade side of things felt this way, but with how much of it I saw, it felt as though a good chunk of these people straight up turned against him. So why is this a bad thing? Well, in addition to what I mentioned in the main video, something said by Xenoblade YouTuber K Jewelers, who's also got good videos about the game by the way, nicely sums it up. And I quote, "I can understand the sentiment. Rex is a character that unfortunately gets hated on a lot, and Smash pushing him to the sidelines somewhat continues that trend." If you're wondering, said hate is a can of worms of its own. While a good chunk of it can be attributed to mischaracterization or people just looking for things to hate, there's too much to try and go through without making the video longer than it should be. But I'll be going over the most common issue in its own section. Anyway, that's pretty much one of 2 big reasons why I'm split between the final product, even despite the whole thing about hardware limitations. Now, I totally get just simply not liking a character in general. There will always be people that dislike something if it exists. But when there's a lot of people being obnoxious and vocal about said hate, to the point where some of them like to pick on those who feel the opposite, it certainly gives the feeling as though the fandom's against them. Also, unlike the typical Smash fan that goes apeshit at any character that's a first party or not their most wanted, Smash obviously has a wide reach, so annoying as it can be sometimes, it's easy to just dismiss them as petty people being petty. Xenoblade, on the other hand, is still kind of a niche, so that's why it's harder to apply that same logic. Top that with surface level reasons that aren't exactly valid, and it's not a good feeling to say the least. I know it's not a new concept, but as someone who's been with the series since the first game, It kinda sucks regardless that a portion of the fandom is like that now, even though it's still some kind of niche. Speaking of portions, that's what I still think the hate camp is. I know for a fact that I've still seen pushback against it, like art or appreciation threads. Anyway, that's pretty much it on how I feel like there was a 180 within people who previously showed support for him. So as I also mentioned, the presentation revealed the initial plans for Rex, and that he had a bigger presence than just two things. This basically had me at ease, but then there's what people did anyway. Whether it was words or art, they pushed it aside, essentially grouping him into the same quote-unquote losers like Waluigi and Springman, for example. See, when the Aegis was first revealed, I get how it was easy to see it that way, with how little Rex seemingly appeared at first, but the fact that this kept going even after the presentation was just annoying. In fact, let's recap how much he appears. Aside from the taunt and final smash, there's also the entry animation, and 4 out of the 6 victory poses across Pyra and Mythra. One detail I decided to save for this video is an interesting detail in the final smash. If you do an up taunt with a final smash ready, Rex will also have the glowing eyes, which is before you even use it. Lastly, I wasn't exaggerating when I said his appearance in another's moveset is the most a character in that spot has ever had. I did my research, and only Morgana seems to rival him. Although, it does kinda bug me that despite everything, the one place Rex is missing from is the mural. Even then, there is also something Rex has that everyone else doesn't in terms of appearing in taunts. As you all know, it's possible to cancel them by moving or getting hurt mid-animation. Watch what happens next. Morgana just straight up disappears. Rex doesn't. Did you know that? I think this makes him feel like more than just part of a taunt, as if you've momentarily summoned him. The same could be said for how the camera angle from a Smash Ball also focuses on him. It's a clear sign to at least try and give the feeling that Rex is still there to those who want him playable. But nope. It seems that no matter how implemented they are, people see snubbed character equals cheap jokes. Rex has a bigger presence than people give him credit for, but that all just tends to be ignored. Similar to what I said at the start of this section, some people even go as far as to depict Pyra and Mythra seeing his presence as a nuisance, which is needlessly out of character of them, especially if you've played their home game. Anyway, much like how I said there's pushback against the negativity earlier, there are people that give his implementation the proper acknowledgement, which really is revitalizing considering what I've been talking about. Special mention goes to this here artist, who has some great examples showing what I mean in tweet form. I would have also used art examples of this stuff, but I really didn't want to use people's art without their permission. So to top this all off, I did mention there was one other big reason why I was split between the Xenoblade 2 representation. It's definitely something that would have been beneficial to the game itself had Rex been playable, but it would have been this, which I feel was the one thing missing from all of the beneficial stuff now that the game's in Smash. Dispelling the stigma against his English voice actor. Some of you may or may not know this, but one thing that unfortunately plagued Xenoblade 2, possibly as a byproduct of time constraints among other internal things, is that the base game's English dub has some pretty inconsistent voice direction, which is how a character sounds is dictated for scenes. Unfortunately, one of the most infamous and egregious examples of it happens early on during the first action scene of the game, and it's mainly about a yell Rex made during that scene. Okay, that's enough. I'm sure you've probably heard it at least once somewhere. Anyway, his voice actor wasn't the only one in the game who got screwed over by this. There are at least 3 other characters I know off the top of my head who had some weird moments of their own. The thing is, with Rex being the protagonist, he easily took the brunt of people saying the voice acting sucks, and in the process, they slander his English voice actor, Al Weaver, saying he's terrible, he can't scream or yell, and how his performance is the worst in the entire game. Some even trash it just to defend the rest of the dub. You know what doesn't help this? It's all because of that, or very few other scenes where he sounds off due to the voice direction, that people invalidate his entire performance. This is something that might not have been his fault, but it's become one of the most exhaustingly widespread misconceptions about him that are surface level. Even after Sky Bennett, the Aegis' voice actress, revealed things about the voice direction while streaming, such as not being given context, nor being allowed retakes, it hasn't really slowed down some of the hate, even for other voice actors that were involved with the game. While I do remember hearing about those two things on her Xenoblade 2 stream, I did reach out to her about it on one of her latest streams at the time of writing to double check.
Yeah, that's what I would say. we did the best with what we had, including the director. And, you know, there were some things that were lacking in context, but it was only because things were new and still developing. Now that I've also had more jobs, we all, you know, the voice acting is being recorded at the time that the game is still being developed. And especially with a international production, there's going to be cross-cultural things that need to be deciphered that we might not get right all the time.
Even then, I honestly think it's overblown. The game is at least 60 hours long, and I can assure he doesn't sound like this for the entire game. Al Weaver was still able to pull off a solid performance overall, even with the direction's inconsistencies. Not only was he still capable of conveying other emotions well,
60,000? Do you want a kidney as well?
but I think he got down some solid yelling as the game went on, and that part could also go for the rest of the cast. In case what I said isn't enough, I do have some examples from the middle of the game to prove this. The problem is, there are spoiler scenes used here, so if you don't want to see these, take this time to skip to this timestamp listed. If you don't care about spoilers or already played Xenoblade 2, then let me show you these.
Grabs! Grabs! Okay, here we go. Pyra! Pyra! Isn't that the reason that you blades exist? And when I'm not around to stand by you in that effort, someone else will! That's right. When a person dies, that's it for them. But their thoughts and memories will always be passed on to someone else. Isn't that the same with you blades? Isn't that how you've always lived? We're no different. We're gonna break the 500-year-long curse right here. Let's do it! I'm doing it for myself. If it helps put smiles on people's faces, helps them live their lives together, then that's my role in this world!
Also worth mentioning is that he has some of these yells when using certain level 4 blade specials after Chapter 7.
Yeah! Hack! Work!
Those are what I think are some good examples from Al Weaver's performance, which I was able to pinpoint much easier thanks to watching Chugga Conroy's playthrough of the game. But even if you skipped here, that does bring me to one thing. You can't just easily show people these. Most people wouldn't want to get spoiled on something they might be interested in. That said, it's unfortunate that the voice direction ended up locking Al Weaver's finest moments to when the story gets full of spoilers. However, there is Smash Bros. Now, which as I hoped, has Al Weaver's best performance as Rex by far. Allow me to demonstrate how by comparing certain lines from his home game and Smash.
Hack! Huh? Burning sword! Burning sword! Nice one! Nice one, Pyra! You show 'em, Tora! You show 'em, Mythra!
Even before his Smash appearance came around, I was fully convinced that he was never a bad actor. Smash just made me more sure than ever before that he always had it in him. The voice direction was just a problem. There's just one issue despite how good these sound in Smash. In addition to how I feel like he could have had multiple lines for certain things, like Doc Lewis does in Little Mac's victory poses, they're glanced over just because he's not the one playable. While he obviously would have had more lines if he was, there would have been plenty of battle yells, which we only got like one of, not counting the final Smash lines anyway. This brings me to how during the reveal, a big part of why I was so elated until the splash screen was because I thought it was finally time for this Stigma to fall. That said, it absolutely stung when I later saw people gushing about how much better the Aegis sounds in Smash, and there was next to no mention of how Rex sounded better as well. Don't get me wrong, it's still good to see the Aegis get a new set of lines. Though, in all fairness, I think they would have gotten new lines anyway even if Rex was playable. And a better voice-directed Mythra among others was already in the prequel DLC, which didn't have Rex due to when it's set. Even then, despite this and Monolith's efforts to make the game as best as it could be post-launch, redoing dialogue that wasn't delivered properly wasn't one of them. Also, not even the game's tutorials and chart translation errors were fixed either. I was gonna make that a visual joke, but I later realized that's also something that should have been fixed as much as there should have been re-recorded lines. I know it's costly to bring in voice actors again, but this wouldn't be for all of the dialogue. As such, unless there's a Xenoblade Warriors waiting to be revealed, or if they pull a Super Mario Party and give Xenoblade 2 a definitive edition update with numerous fixes because of Smash, there are no other games for Rex to appear again anywhere in sight. This means the misconceptions aren't going away anytime soon. On top of other things I've mentioned up to this point, like the newfound negativity towards Rex, this is something I was admittedly upset about at first. The ambiguity of Smash's future after Ultimate didn't help either. Hold on. There's talk about a third game? Oh. Well, that depends on who shows up, so I'll believe it when I see it. Anyway, as it stands now, I really do feel bad for Al Weaver. Rex was his first major voice acting role, which had to have been a lot of pressure. And honestly, it's why I tend to feel annoyed about cheap jokes that just rely on slandering his performance. I see it the same way as Smash jokes that solely rely on, say, bashing Fire Emblem. They're nothing more than argument fuel that also happens to be low-hanging fruit. I know that there will always be people who don't like how a voice actor sounds, but this one about Al Weaver's work is so intensely widespread, it's staggering. I'm still glad they were able to get him back for Smash, but it sucks that his work in that game didn't seem to get enough appreciation. It also feels as though people don't know that voice actors are people too. For instance, there are people that don't like how Zelda sounds in Breath of the Wild, and her English voice actress has talked about getting hate and how she deals with it. In this case, however, even though Al Weaver's only social media outlet is an Instagram page, at the time of recording, there is zero mention of Xenoblade on it, not even when the Smash reveal happened. Considering he still shows off other stuff he was in, it's not hard to imagine that all of the hate about his work as Rex might have negatively impacted him to some extent. Lastly, I know it's probably not the first thing people would think about, but people also just don't seem to take voice direction into consideration. In my experience, I've only seen a small amount of people who do when it comes to Xenoblade 2. Even then, considering all the time constraints due to it being a launch year game, things might have been taxing for the voice director too. I don't think they're entirely at fault either, since I don't want to normalize slamming another person instead. I just wanted to put into perspective how big of a problem the matter is, and why it's such a shame it still gets spread around. Bottom line, I'm just trying to reinforce that while there were moments where Rex and some others didn't sound that great in their game, it wasn't the voice actor's fault. It's something that just might have been reinforced way more if Rex was playable. Now, I know I put just as much effort into this video than with the main video, but it's because this was something that I also had strong feelings about. Not to mention, it's something I don't think I've seen talked about a lot. I know I'm not the only one who feels the way I do about Rex's status in Smash for one thing, because while I was gathering screenshots to help gauge things, I saw posts that showed similar thoughts to mine. As for the matter about Rex's voice, while I think it def would have happened if he was playable, despite everything, I can only hope that this starts to bring more attention to Al Weaver's finer moments, and maybe just start to help turn things around on that front, until whenever the next game he has a voiced appearance in comes by. I know this won't single-handedly change people's minds or whatever, but with how Xenoblade is still a niche of some kind, I think it's worth trying to put some kind of potential influence out there, while also giving those who feel the same something to refer to. So that's just about it. Thanks again if you stuck around this long, especially if you came here right after watching the main video. Once again, feel free to let me know what you think, leave a like, and maybe even a sub. Thanks again, and I'll see you all in the next video, which probably won't be another video essay, considering what I usually do. See ya!